Welcome to Ninerology, Faithful in the Trenches. I'm your host, Alan, and I'm under the weather, but we are here because we got an update on the Brandon Aiyuk situation and the contract with the 49ers. And as usual, while the 49ers might be elite on the field, when it comes to their contract negotiating skills with their skill players, they are amateur at best. Talk about what is going on with John Lynch, Parag, and that front office. It is just atrocious when it comes to giving your players deals. Now, yes, you can hear those comments from John Lynch. We are pretty good about paying our top players, and we have a good record with that. The problem is their record is pretty notorious for lowballing throughout the offseason until you get to the end. And what did that get them? Now they're having to probably shell out at around $30 million a year to pay Brandon Aiyuk, where if they paid him at the beginning of the offseason, the market was right around $25 million a year with Devontae Smith. Now, because the deals with Amon St. Brown, you got the deal with A.J. Brown, these different contracts are now causing the market to shift for wide receivers. And because John Lynch and Parag decided to sit and twiddle their thumbs like they usually do, now they have to pay for that. Now the issue is, what is taking so long with the Aiyuk situation? If it were up to the 49ers front office, they would have him play out his fifth year and then pay him the next offseason. The reason for that is because of how these contracts are typically structured. If you take, for example, Devontae Smith, his cap numbers are relatively low for the first couple of years, and then they go ahead and skyrocket. You look at Amon St. Brown, that's probably the deal that you're looking at for Brandon Aiyuk. I know that's what he's looking at, roughly around that $30 million a year average. His cap number for year one, 2024, is right around $5 million. Now, because Brandon Aiyuk is on that fifth year, that typically averages to about $17 million for the fifth year wide receiver. Now, if he gets an extension, this first year will be a cut with cap. So the 49ers would save about $7 million with that. But usually the first 2 years in a new contract are relatively manageable, and it begins to balloon in the third year. For example, Amon St. Brown, $4 to $5 million for the first year. The following year in 2025, you have $13.9 million. That's still pretty manageable. Then it balloons up to $33 million for the cap hit in 26, 29 and 27, 26 and 28, then drops back down to 16. And that's what the 49ers are trying to avoid, at least in a couple of years. They know that they have another manageable year of Nick Bosa's contract this year, and then it balloons next year. Then they have Brock Purdy, who will somehow get a little manageable for the first year. It's not going to be $900,000 like it was right now in his current rookie deal. But with Brandon Aiyuk, if they can pay the $17 million this year, right now, and then redo the contract, then they'll be guaranteed at least 3 years of manageable wide receiver contract based off of Aiyuk's deal. And so that's what they're trying to avoid. The problem is they pinned themselves in a hole. If they would have been able to pay him before Devontae Smith got his deal, right at that $25 million a mark, then they'd be fine. The problem is now they are pinned into a corner. They can't have him stay on his fifth-year deal because he's going to sit, hold out training camp, and who knows what kind of shape he'd be in. And so you got to pay him. The problem is now, what does that do for future years? What does that do for Brock Purdy negotiations? What does that do for current players, current veterans that are fan favorites, that are crucial to the 49ers? What does that do for them? You look at a Fred Warner. What does that do to a Fred Warner? What does that do to a George Kittle? What does that do to other players that are being paid? Javon Hargrave. And so the question is, how do you keep this team competitive? Because the 49ers front office has been lackadaisical, for lack of a better term, with these deals. And so if you break down Brandon Aiyuk's deal, he absolutely deserves what's coming to him. The market's been set. He's going to get paid between $28 and $32 million a year. My guess is it's going to be right around 29 to 30. I think the 49ers are going to be hard-pressed, and it's going to come down to the guaranteed money. Now, the structure is going to be what the structure is. The first 2 years are going to be manageable. That's what they need. They're going to try to get that third year and try to push a lot of that signing bonus toward the end. I'm sure Brandon Aiyuk's pushing for a 4-year deal so he can maximize another contract toward the latter part of his career. But my guess is the 49ers want a 5-year deal so that way they could stretch out that signing bonus and help with that cap relief. The problem is, again, wide receivers know that, there's also a short shelf life for them as well. So if you can get a 3 to 4 year deal, you can get paid now and then paid again when the market gets reset again in a few years. And so Brandon Aiyuk's playing this smart. Again, the market's been set. If you look at what was reported specifically by Jeremy Fowler, this was a quote. This one's tricky because he was implicated in some trade talks around the draft. He wants a new contract, has 1 year left. I'm told the 49ers are certainly open to doing a deal, but talks have not progressed enough where things are close. And so is he going to show up for their workouts? Hard to tell right now. The market is pretty set for him. Amon St. Brown in Detroit did that deal recently, about $28 million a year. So that's something for Aiyuk and the 49ers to work off of, but I'm told they're not quite there yet. And then again, you look at A.J. Brown's deal. You're talking about $32 million average per year. Now, those cap hits, $11 million the first year, 17 the next, 23, 22, 27, 29, and then 53 the last year, which means that's more for void, pushing off the balance. It's not, your contracts are never going to go to the last year of the deal. And so what are the 49ers going to do? They're in a corner. They have to make a decision here. They can't trade him because there is zero value for the Super Bowl window for this year. Zero value to trade him for draft picks because there's not going to be any return on investment this year. So you got to make this thing work out. You got to keep your team happy. You want to make sure that they're healthy going into the year. You have a tough schedule this year, and we know that they're not close. And we know Brandon Aiyuk is smart. He's going to hold it out. He's got players like Deebo Samuel, Nick Bosa, Fred Warner, and George Kittle to lean on who have been through these contract negotiations. And so he's going to hold his ground, as he should, and get what he's due. The problem is, John Lynch, it's time to break out of this habit that you've been in, this crazy cycle, and pay your players sooner rather than later. That way, you know that they're coming to camp set. You're not waiting for additional salary cap because guess what? Everything's there. You already got your post-June designation. You actually saved money by signing Brandon Aiyuk this year. And so you need to figure that out. Prague, you got to figure this out, make the numbers work. But he needs to be paid before another wide receiver gets paid this offseason and the market gets reset again. Well, that's all we have for today. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and we'll see you next time on